Sara Feldman. Let's get going. I am Sara Feldman. I'm excited to talk to you about intelligent swarming today. And just to set your expectations, we're only going to scratch the surface. Intelligent swarming, thanks to our members, who I'll talk about in a minute, the methodology that we have captured is fairly robust. And we won't be able to get into too many of the details, but I hope to pique your interest, introduce you to why it's such a positive change for many organizations. And mostly, I hope to spark some great discussion for your breakouts. I'm looking forward to seeing the mural that you all create. And then we can always keep the conversation going at another time. The Consortium for Service Innovation, we are a not-for-profit think tank focused on customer engagement. We are most known for developing a methodology called knowledge-centered service, KCS. Intelligent swarming, I would say, is our next most mature methodology, and we have lots of other initiatives and stuff going on behind the scenes around customer engagement. What's cool about the fact that we are not for profit is that our members sort of fund the work, they participate, they co-create our methodologies, and then for the most part we get to share it out with the world. There's lots of stuff that's sort of in progress that's members only, but as soon as something sort of becomes reusable, we like to put it out in the world. And so we'll be talking a bit about some of that today. So let's start intelligent swarming, why it exists, with a little bit of a story going back in time. Once upon a time, and spoiler alert, this once upon a time might actually be your current reality. So support tiers and escalations, this is probably a model that's pretty familiar to most of you. In this setup, many folks will find that L1 is a little boring and repetitive. They've seen the same issues, simple issues over and over again. Knowledge ends up siloed because you have these sort of segmented tiers or groups. And because of that, you really do have inhibited growth and development because of all the handoffs. And more than anything, customer experience suffers because handoffs and escalations, things are a little bit slower. Please appreciate that I Google image searched old-fashioned cubicles so I could put a black and white photo in here to really convey how this has been around for a while, although it's probably still your current in full color reality. So our members who've been collaborating since 1992, sometime in the early 2000s, I think the beginnings of intelligent swarming started, a better method emerged. And this is what our members sought to do with intelligent swarming. They wanted to create an environment that facilitates collaboration and optimizes resources. There's got to be a better way than the original structure of support teams that started out. We want to enable our folks to learn quicker, more in the flow, feel empowered in their roles, and of course, focus on the customer. We don't want the customer to suffer because of our internal processes anymore. And really, this came out of a need for organizations to be able to adapt to more complex environments. And one more note, I want to draw your attention to this picture, this standard stock image flowchart, but I manually put smiley faces on each one of these people to show you how much happier people are when they're in an intelligent swarming environment. Took the time just for you. Okay, so how does intelligent swarming actually work? How is it different from what we're used to? Well, what you'll see here is that in many ways, it's getting rid of things that we're pretty familiar with. Instead of tiers, we actually get rid of tiers, and issues are matched to folks who can handle them based on most relevant skill set. It's basically a skill matching as opposed to a grouped tier level matching that happens. No more escalations. Whoever first touches the case is then the owner and is responsible for seeing it through until it is resolved. Then, if necessary, the swarm happens. So most of the time, if things are going well, if that matching happens intelligently as it should, the person who first gets the case is most likely to be able to solve it on their own. But anytime they're unable to, a swarm of other relevant folks hops in and they help them find the solution. And that's how the original owner resolves the case, and they learn as they resolve the case, and that customer gets that quicker answer. And no assignments via queues. People opt in both to accept the cases and to help people in those swarms. Very important distinctions compared to how used to happen. So real quick, I can get into the methodology itself. This graphic represents a robust methodology of 4 principles, 6 core concepts. We have these 3 practices of connect, collaborate, and recognize. They really work in tandem together to make swarming intelligent as opposed to just collaboration. There's a lot of thought and design that goes into this. We have design techniques and adoption considerations, lots of experience to share from our members and beyond who have done this in the real world. And all these points sort of help you set you up for success for your folks to practice this. And the benefits are pretty awesome for everyone involved. Employees like it more. I already talked about the learning and the growth, common motivational factors that we talk about: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Folks really thrive in that type of environment. The business benefits, because work happens faster, there's less rework due to those handoffs or escalations. Employees are more engaged, and of course the customers benefit because of faster resolutions and often more thorough and helpful solutions as well, because they're getting the latest and greatest information from folks. Lots of our members and beyond, I mentioned, have experience with intelligent swarming. Here's just a few of them. And these are the types of real life benefits and positive outcomes that they've experienced. Absolutely improved resolution times. Whoops, got ahead of myself there. There we go. Easier to resolve more complex and newer issues. The support analysts love it. Like we said, it really can transform and accelerate career growth and skills development, reduce new hire training. We've had some members report up to 50% shorter ramp up times, and data shows that customers end up with better experiences as well. Speaking of data, I'm not going to dwell here, but of course, these folks who have implemented these programs have tracked everything. We know how support and success folks love your numbers. So you can go find all of these numbers in detail and their stories in a bunch of case studies that I have linked here for you. So the most common, or one of the most common sort of worries that we hear from people when we first introduce the foundation of intelligent swarming is, wait, you said people are going to opt in to help? We're not assigning work to people anymore? How's the work going to get done? No one's going to pick up any work to do. And fortunately, our members have thought about that, and the methodology addresses it. So really, in this new paradigm, the value shifts away from the case as currency. Stick with me, because cases are still important. But we look at work as work. Anything that contributes to the value of the organization or things progressing is considered work. It's not just cases. So you're actually making room for different types of work and contribution beyond just the case. And that ends up actually quite motivating. Also in the model, folks are actually recognized for taking on challenging work and opting in to help people, not just for taking the most cases. So in the system, the work still gets done, I promise you. And that really is because folks are motivated in this system. They have autonomy, they get to experience mastery as their skills improve. They feel purpose in terms of helping the whole team succeed, and customers have better experiences. So folks really do opt in. And speaking of team, the way that contribution is looked at in an intelligent swarming system, it's much more team focused, and people feel more connected to it. And it really unlocks a new way of having visibility to your impact as an individual when you see how you help your team and your customers succeed. And just FYI, the opt-in approach, we hear this question from leaders more often than folks who actually are participating. Leaders are the ones that are more worried about it because it's not what they're used to. But when you communicate and involve folks in how you're doing this and the why, they really are happy to do it. So before I get to my final thoughts, I'm going to really try and stick to the 10 minutes here. If you want to go learn more, we have tons of resources out there. Like I said, because we are not for profit, we have the entire methodology published for free. You can go read it all yourself. If you want a little bit more guidance, we do have trainings and certifications available for fees. These types of things actually go fund the continuing evolution of our methodologies. So if you appreciate this type of guidance, it's there for you. But if you want to go find it for yourself, you can read it all in about an hour and feel pretty informed to move forward. So final thoughts. I'm right at 10 minutes here. I'll go through these pretty quickly. The most important lesson that folks have learned is do not put goals on activities. People will gain anything that can sort of like, if you goal it, then they will start to gamify it and you will get the wrong behavior. So do not put goals on activities, but you do want to give visibility to those activities so people know what's happening and focus more on team rather than individual. Be wary of over-engineering when you start your intelligent swarming journey. A way to do that is to involve the people who are doing the work in your design decisions when you're making these big shifts. And then these are some questions to sort of leave you with as you ponder, as you go about your day or in your breakout rooms, is if you de-emphasize some of these things, these older things that we're used to, goal or case closure goals and deflection, what do you make room for if you open yourself up, your team up to a new way of thinking about how to do work? And how can you think about value and contribution in a new way? What are all the ways that folks in your teams are contributing to value in the organization? And how do you reconsider what metrics actually are meaningful to contributing value and making an impact in your organization? That's it. Let's look at some questions. Oh gosh, there's already a bunch.
Well, first of all, while you're kind of reading through these, everyone, let's thank Sara again. Some happy hands. Thank you so much, Sara. You've definitely got my brain spinning. I've been keeping tabs on the chat as well. One thing that I do want to quickly touch on, and the chat's going great, and it looks like a lot of people have started to use intelligent swarming or have used it before, which is going to be great for our panel discussion at the end of today's meeting. Sara, one thing I'd love for you to touch on briefly is, can you dive a bit more into visibility to impact and how intelligent swarming specifically addresses that or does that in a unique way?
Yeah, so one of the practices is recognition, and that's really about showing all the different ways that people contribute in this type of system. So opting in to take cases, opting in to take harder cases, opting in to help people in the swarm. So when someone raises their hand to ask for help, like, I can't solve this case on my own, let me find my relevant peers. Peers are invited to help. So by opting in to contribute to a swarm, that's a different way that you can sort of see how you're contributing to the overall impact of the team and the better customer experience, the better support functions under intelligent swarming. So it's really shifting your perspective of my job is to close cases to my job is to help the customer and help my teammates. And ultimately, there's ways that we capture knowledge along the way and funnel this feedback back to product improvements that unlocks new ways of impact and value to the organization beyond closing cases.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, I mean, the big thing here is that you move from your job is to find cases and close them to you're opting in as a CS rep to certain issues that you are attracted to, you have unique expertise around, and other people might be pulling you into those as well.
Absolutely. And you get to learn and expand your skills along the way. So in some models, you can actually sort of express some skill areas that maybe you aren't an expert in yet, but you want to, and then you get visibility to those cases and can choose to take them on and then ask your peers who maybe know a little bit more to help you. So you also get to sort of show your skill development happening quicker, and that's part of that. You then become more equipped to sort of impact the organization and add value. So that's part of it as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Sara. All right, so that's going to be important, folks, for our breakout rooms. Is our question does involve improving visibility to impact. So thanks for covering that, Sara. And then there is one question. I know that you're reading through this, but there is one question here that I think is a really good starting point for our Q&A. And folks, please put your questions in here as well. But to kind of prime the pump a bit, Darcy Strong asks, where and how does an organization start? What's the best way? I mean, because you're moving from, when you were talking, I was thinking about lean management. This really feels like lean management in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But where would an organization start?
Yeah, and I saw Lindsay in the chat said some teams work this way and call it agile. It's also, you often see this out in the world, people saying collaborative support. So other folks in the industry are moving in this way. I would say our members have very thoroughly captured those practices that I talked about in the methodology. So I hate to like give you homework, but I really encourage you to start by reading the practices guide, because there's some really important elements and guidance in there about adoption. For instance, doing an analysis first to sort of what's your current state of affairs, how ready is your organization for this change? I mean, change management is just as important as, as part of adopting intelligent swarming. And there's a phased approach that's recommended in the practices guide that's about setting up a design session, doing a pilot, starting small and simple, and really not over engineering at first. So how can you even manually start to unlock this new way of working and shift what you're working towards this and go for incremental changes? But absolutely, you have to have buy-in from leadership that everyone needs to understand we're going to be changing, our metrics are going to be changing, what we highlight as valuable to the organization is going to be changing, and getting alignment and buy-in from all your stakeholders internally. You don't want to move forward without that. So step one is getting people on board with the idea.
Excellent. Thank you. Then, another question I think is really relevant to our discussion here today. Marge asks, how successful is intelligent swarming in supporting an application that is so complex that there are not many experts who can take tickets from start to finish because of the lack of skill sets, knowledge of the product?
Well, I would say that's an excellent opportunity for intelligent swarming. In fact, we find that the more complex environments, they see quicker, more positive results from adopting intelligent swarming, because right now you're just reinforcing the fact that you just have, in this scenario, you're reinforcing the fact that you just have a couple experts. But if you actually give case ownership to someone who's maybe not quite ready to solve it on their own, but then they get to work hand in hand with someone who is, at the end of that case, that agent who didn't know the answer before already knows it. And the next time that case comes in, they already know it. So I think, if anything, it's a great place to start if that is your scenario. I want to jump in. I see a question from Darcy that I love. Would you advise adopting KCS and KM processes before trying to adopt intelligent swarming? Our members have tried this both ways. I've heard from some folks who say that they think that KCS is a better first step, but we have seen folks do it both ways. So it's more about understanding your greatest need in your organization right now and what's going to help you get to the outcomes and tackle your challenges most. If you're doing intelligent swarming sort of the best way, at the end of each case, you are capturing the knowledge that you learned in the workflow, which is KCS. So you want to at least sort of be ready for that real-time in the flow knowledge capture that KCS recommends.
Let's go with one more, Sarah.
Okay. There's some longer questions in here. I'll definitely answer these later, but it's hard to kind of read them on the fly. Do you find you need more or less employees with this? I grabbed that one, honestly, because it was quick enough to answer. The idea is that when you're doing intelligent swarming, you can scale your business at a higher rate without having to hire as much, because you're increasing capacity of each and every person on your team. So over time, you can, scale your business, and you don't need to keep hiring as more new employees. I wouldn't use intelligent swarming as a way to get rid of employees, of course, but you're unlocking potential and increasing skill set and capability of your existing employees, and they're able to increase capacity as a result.
Wow, Sarah, this is great. You've got me thinking in so many different ways. And I love that that's our last question, because everyone on this phone call knows that you and your teams are hitting your COGS, and the board doesn't like high COGS. So the fact that you can increase capacity, I think that's really huge. Mm-hmm. I'm also really pleased to see a lot of people are utilizing this, and some people are like, well, we didn't really have a term for this, but this is kind of what we're doing. So it's kind of cool to see for those of you out there, they're like, yeah, now I have a term that this new categorical name is kind of coming on the scene. So wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Sara. And thank you all for your questions. Were you planning, I guess we'll plan to share the Google Slides in the LinkedIn group. Does that work?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
I will share them, and I dropped a link to the practices guide. There's a bunch of other links that I put in the deck, but the practices guide is really a place to start, and it's a fairly quick read. You know, if you set aside an hour or two, you can get through it, and that will give you a great foundation.
Excellent. Awesome. Okay. Well, everybody, thank you. Let's thank Sara one more time with some happy hands. Thank you so much, Sara. It's got our brains going, and really that's what this brain trust is all about. So thank you so much, Sara.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
All right. I'm going to stop the recording for now.